Hello and welcome to the booth, conversation as it should be. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sean Zimney.
And I'm your second co-host, Matthew Angham. Today's topic, practicing faith versus having religion. But first, a quick reminder of what we do here at the booth. The booth is a place for conversation on a variety of different topics, subjects, and there's no punishment for honesty. So we talk about things and we walk away as friends. So Sean, why don't you intro what we're talking about today?
Yeah, like Matthew said, we're talking about practicing faith versus having religion. We'll get into what that means specifically, but this will be an interesting conversation because Matthew and I are both Christian, so we're talking from a Christian perspective, but very different Christians. I my faith, I'm a man of tired but elastic faith, but not necessarily ties to a specific denomination. Matthew has a much different background with religion. Tell him what it is.
Definitely, yeah. I grew up in a Lutheran home, part of the ELCA, and I've been a part of that my entire life, and I plan on going to seminary next year to be a pastor in the ELCA. So definitely a little bit different, but that's what we're about here at the booth.
So you're specifically Lutheran backgrounds. I have a Catholic and a Lutheran background. I had my first communion Catholic, was baptized Catholic, but then was confirmed Lutheran. So I'm all over the place. I don't know if I'm Catherine, Lutheran, Lutheric, I don't know what you call that. But anyway, let's get into this topic of practicing faith versus having religion. Matthew brought this up to me, I'd say this is probably the second week I knew Matthew, because Matthew's a guy who's going to bring up the most profound religious topics and to really get a hold of, what's this guy all about. So Matthew, explain a little bit what you actually mean by this question.
Well, I think there's a divide between just even within Christianity, but across all religions, about who actually practices the faith, who really believes in what they claim to believe in, and you see that practiced throughout their lives, versus people who say they are of a certain religion, and they have that religion, but they don't necessarily practice it or utilize it throughout their lives. So a quick little statistic, about 30% of the world's population is Christian, so we're going to be obviously focusing on primarily the Christian faith in this conversation. But 30% of the world's population, that's 2.2 roughly billion people, say that they are Christian. However, I would look at that and say, how many are actually practicing the faith, and how many just claim to have?
You would say a true Christian is someone who's practicing the faith, doing good works, doing the things out of faith. Not just to make themselves look better, to feel good about themselves, but really inspired by faith. That's a true Christian. So you would say that number's large, 2.2 billion, I believe you said, but the true Christians, in your perspective, is much lower than that, the true Christians.
Well, so first disclaimer, true Christians is an awful term, and that we are not judging who is and who isn't a Christian.
No, I'm definitely not, Matthew.
So that's not what we're saying here. I would say that in my own personal walk, being a Christian, or in my opinion, a follower of Christ, not even a Christian, a follower of Christ, is accepting that he is the Son of God, that he died for us, and then being transformed by that to then love and spread that gospel to everyone else. So that is someone that I believe is practicing faith, whereas maybe having religion or having Christianity is saying that you believe these things, but maybe it hasn't molded your heart in a certain way. Mm-hmm. It hasn't changed you. It hasn't moved you to do anything with that. Real quick, we also thought it'd be interesting to define the word practice versus the word have. Sure. So practice is a couple different definitions, but a habitual or customary performance. It is the action or process of performing or doing something. It is a repeated performance or systematic exercise for the purpose of acquiring skill or proficiency, whereas have also has a couple definitions, but it's basically to possess, to get, to hold, to receive. Sure. So definitely you can kind of see the difference between those two things in regards to what we're talking about.
Most definitely. Let's get in right now to the big question that's going to stem this entire conversation. It's a question that I posed to Matthew. The question of, does Jesus care? More specifically, less cynically stated, does Jesus care if you believe in him or not? I'm under the impression that God doesn't care if you believe in him or her. God doesn't care if you believe in him or her. I think if you are living a life that is inspired, not necessarily even directly inspired by Jesus, because again, if you don't believe him, it's not inspired by him, but a life that Jesus would want you to live. Treating others as they should be treated, living a good life. But if you don't believe in him and you're living a good life, I think he's fine with that. I don't think he cares if you believe in him, but if you're following in the path that he wants you to follow, but not even for him, I'm under the perspective that doesn't matter. That's not Jesus' biggest worry.
I will say that I disagree with that. Only in that I think he does care whether or not we believe in him. We have to believe that he died for us, that he is the Son of God, that we are forgiven for our sins through him. And that's what he cares about, because he came to, and without getting into a deep theological discussion that neither of us are qualified for.
Oh, most definitely.
Jesus came and he established that we no longer have to do good works. We no longer have to follow a schedule of when to sacrifice, or what you can and cannot eat, how long you can have your hair, all these different things, right? All these things that, quote unquote, made you righteous. And he came, got rid of that, said we are all sinners, right? But that he's offering this gift for us, and that we are now forgiven, right? We're free to live. Mm-hmm. And so I think he does care, because you have to believe that he came to do that. Otherwise, it just is following the works again. It's following what it was before.
Why does Jesus need gratitude? Why does Jesus need the selfishness of gratitude from people, right? Like, so this is, I want to just say this right away too. This is, a lot of my ideas in this come from a man named Alan Story, who's a reverend in South Africa, where I went this summer with a group of wonderful individuals. So a lot of this, that if any of those people are listening, it's going to sound familiar, but a quote from Alan Story about this issue is that Jesus would rather us be committed to his mission and his actions than he himself. And then he posed the question, have you given your life to what Jesus gave his life to? So that doesn't necessarily mean do you believe in Jesus, but have you given your life to what he gave his life to, which is us, right? It's for us. Have you given your life for humanity? It's really the question of asking every day, are you living, is what you're doing, every action you do on the micro and macro level, are you doing things that are serving life, serving to create life, or serving to destroy it? Right? So, in every single wavelength of life, I hope to be asking this question internally, maybe to the point of subconsciously. But I think you should be asking it consciously, because that's really what it comes down to. Because I believe that the reason why I say I'm not associated with a particular denomination is because religion to me can often become shackles. It can become your shackles. They can constrict you. Religion are fantastic. I love the ELCA, I love the Catholic Church. I have no issues with them. But just for me personally, it can often become like it's confining me to something. I consider myself a follower of Jesus and his teachings, but I'm not confined to a specific set doctrine or belief, only that I want to dedicate myself and my life to how he dedicated his life. Mm-hmm. Regardless if you believe he's God or not, he had some pretty darn good things to say.
Sure. But I think that really, I think it's been morphed in today's society that because you would say that you should follow his teachings, right? Like, what was the quote that you had again, the quotation from that South African reverend?
The quote was, Jesus would rather us be committed to his mission and his actions than he himself. Have you given your life to what Jesus gave his life to?
So in my mind, this is kind of where Christianity has been, it's been morphed into something that it's not, and that people think dedicating one's life to Christ means just going to church on a Sunday and a Wednesday, mm-hmm. and saying that you believe, and it's
for
this
a lot
having
of
religion, right? It's this having religion. Whereas practicing faith is doing exactly what this man said, that you, mm-hmm. Reverend
Alan Story.
Alan Story. Reverend Alan Story said, and that you should be living the life that Christ lived.
Yes.
In this world.
Inspired by the way.
Inspired by the way. And you should if you believe in Christ, in my opinion. So I think we're on the same page. Mm-hmm. I think it's just
I think we're on the same page that, yes, I mean, doing good things is the right... well, I think all humans are on that, are on that page of that doing good things is right? But I think what the difference is is that doing good things, from my perspective, doesn't have to be inspired by the divine. It doesn't have to be inspired by a figure of Jesus, right? It just has to be inspired through your own beliefs of humanity. You can be the most secular person in the world, the most worldly person in the world. So I can say I believe that Jesus was a sham, Jesus was not the Son of God, that all religion is phooey, it's all hogwash, it's all baloney. But if I do great things in my life, when I mean great for the betterment of the people around me, for society, for the rest of humanity, not for myself. None of us live a completely selfless life. We can't. But as selfless as we can be, a great human, I don't think Jesus is going to care if I believed in him or not. I don't think there's not an empty seat in heaven because I didn't believe in Christ. Like, I believe that Jesus, this is coming back to my own beliefs, because I do believe Jesus is God, that he died for all of us, not just for believers. And I think we're both on that same page, right? But for me, that means that not like everyone goes to heaven, not that mentality, but that the people who he died for us so that we can be forgiven for those types of things. We are forgiven, okay? So we don't have to believe in him, that believe he was God, but if we live a just life, we are just as deserving as a seat in heaven as the next Christian who goes to church on Christmas and Easter.
So, two questions I would pose to you. One is that crafting this perfect life, right? Are you trying to craft this image of a life that is deserving of heaven?
What do you mean? Like, say, do you mean...
Because if you're living a life dedicated, like you don't believe in God. You don't have a religion. But you're doing good things, right? Mm-hmm. Is that not, again, works? And is it not crafting
almost definitely it is.
Life where you're posing it as, I did all these good things thus. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing is that you can't do enough good things to make up for how broken we are as humans.
Sure.
And when we say that following Christ's works without believing is still okay, I think it's placing us above God. Mm-hmm. Because we're saying, you're right, Christ came, his sacrifice is, to me, not even as close as important as if he were to say, you know what? I died for you guys, and I died for you guys, and
do what you want.
Do what you want. Mm-hmm. It just, to me, that puts us above him, and that's just not
maybe that idea of like, well, then why did he even come in the first place? Well, he came so we could just be a spoiled kids. And that's not what I'm necessarily saying either, because I don't think someone who doesn't believe in God and does bad things is not living a just life. But someone who doesn't believe in God and does great things is living a just life. Because are you on the impression that that people do good things because of religion, or like it stems way back to being inspired by religion, like goodness in people? You're born blank. You're inspired by religion to do good things.
I don't think you're inspired by religion necessarily. More so your upbringing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if your upbringing is religious versus someone whose upbringing is completely secular and non-religious.
I still don't think it's tied to the religion. I think it's tied to how your parents act,
what
is portrayed around you.
Yes.
But, yeah.
I think it's the society you grow up, right? But again, that's getting a little off track. All I'm saying is that I think being people-centered is, to me, the biggest point. Is the biggest point that Jesus talks about. Jesus says, love thy neighbor as yourself. Not like yourself. He doesn't say, love your neighbor like yourself. He says, love thy neighbor as yourself. You do not, doing good things for your neighbor, giving them a little gift, is not as like yourself. As yourself, as in serving yourself. Not serving yourself as being selfish, but serving others. The gospel's theme, to me, when I read the gospel, it makes me reevaluate what's my priority in life. Is it being people-centered? To me, that's the big theme of it. And we all get different things because the Bible is the most subjective book in the world ever written. So we each get different things. So I'm curious as to when you read the gospel, what do you get from it?
I get the word love. I think we're we're on the same page with that as well, and that it is people-centered. The church, when it's the church in the New Testament is the body of believers. It's not a building. It's not a building.
It's not a building or a book.
Nope. Sunday mornings, Wednesday nights. It's a body of believers, and so obviously Christ is 100% people-centered, and that's what we need to be as well. I want to go back. A question I just thought of for you as well is: do you actually give up everything if you're not dedicating your life to Christ? And I think that's the key to where we're different. Is that I think if a person who doesn't believe in Christ but lives a good life is not giving everything up, right? And with the gospel is that we are supposed to lay down our life for the gospel, for the love of Christ. And through that, we are transformed to then do amazing things out of love for others and for individuals and for the hurting and for the other broken. Because
so you think we need to be transformed first? Then what we do matters. But if we're not transformed by faith first, then what we do doesn't matter.
Not that it doesn't matter.
Yes, no, I get you.
But
it has less significance, less weight to it.
It has worldly significance.
Sure, but not inner significance.
It doesn't have, in my opinion, eternal significance.
So what I'm kind of getting, now, correct me if I'm wrong, is that works, say you're not a believer and you do good works, that's still good. It's not a bad thing. But having faith doesn't bring it to another level for others, but for yourself. For as in this internal, for like you said, in eternity. It's not about, faith is not about others in that regard. It's about yourself and what you give up. Because say if you don't have faith, you're not giving up, what, you said your life, your entire life? You're not giving up all? Please explain.
Well, I think when you say that if you don't believe but you do good works throughout your life, it's a good life, right? It's a just life.
Yep.
But through Christ, we are redeemed. Our life is not just good. It's not just anymore. It is redeemed, and we're able to give this love that is so far beyond everything else that we know in this world. That is so different from just doing a work. Good works throughout your life and kind of check marking stuff as you go. And it's just so much bigger and so much more than that. But I want to real quick too acknowledge on the flip side that Romans 14:1 is where I'm reading from. It says, "Except the one whose faith is weak, without quarreling over disputable matters." I wouldn't call us quarreling right now, but so with all of this, when we talk about these things, I don't want to diminish good works and love, right? I don't want to say that these things don't have an impact and are not significant, because even the smallest of faith as small as a mustard seed, right, can transform a nation, a population, a body, of a person. It's so much bigger than us. So I don't want to diminish people who are struggling and then are doing good work. Doing good work. I don't want to diminish any of those things. But
we're both on the same page of that practicing is good, right? We're both on that page. But the issue that I take when I think of, having faith just does something more. It kind of creates this, this is not trying to be attacking, but kind of an ethnocentric viewpoint of Christian culture. And even not even of Christian culture and others, but even within Christian culture. Because all faith, you cannot define faith. Faith is undefinable because it's different for each person, just as each person is different. Some people have very strong, large faith. Some people have very small, weak faith. Most of us are in that middle. I would actually argue that most of us are in not as faithful as we probably like to be. But, so if faith is so important as in you're giving up your life, so does that mean that person with the stronger faith is giving up more than the person with the weaker faith?
No.
So then it's just faith in general. What if you have lost your faith, but you still do good things, but not in the name of Jesus?
I think it's about that pursuit, right, of Christ. I don't think you ever lose your faith. I think God and the Holy Spirit and Jesus are always there. I think that just depending on your circumstances, you might not be seeing it at that current time. Maybe misplaced is a better word. You didn't lose it. You know, if I put my keys in my room and all of a sudden I can't find them, I didn't necessarily lose them. I misplaced them because I know they're in the room.
Sure.
But I have to now actively pursue
to try to find
my keys, to try to find my keys.
Sure.
And it's similar in that whether you have if you have just a little inkling of faith, or if you believe that your faith, you have very few doubts that you're positive in what you believe in.
Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone.
It doesn't really matter because
yes.
you're pursuing. You have to constantly be pursuing and challenging, and
that's part of practicing.
And that's part of practicing.
As you're practicing the faith.
Yes,
and as you're practicing with faith.
Absolutely.
So I would even rephrase this as not even practicing faith, but practicing with faith, because that's what strengthens faith. Is that when you're practicing these good works with a already built faith, and that's what strengthens your faith.
Yeah, because when you're pursuing, so maybe having religion, maybe this is what we found is that having religion might be doing the good works, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Practicing faith might entail the good works, and it does.
Mm-hmm.
Because faith without works is dead. But you have to be pursuing Christ, right, at that same moment, and challenging yourself and all these different things to try to, to constantly be evolving in your faith and to be changing. And when you do those things, it does push you to better serve others, to better serve yourself. All these things that pop up that if you were just having religion and you just do good deeds, those things aren't going to be there to challenge you and to move you and to transform you.
See, faith is like science. And here's how, when I say that. Science, you come up with a scientific theory, and you come up with it, and say you believe in it, but you constantly test it, and you constantly question it, and you constantly act upon it. You do experiments with it to prove it, or to at least show a discernible correlation in two variables or whatever that proves or helps to prove in the way of proving a theory. Faith is the same way. You have faith, you know it's there, you have your theory, because no one can be 100% certain that something exists. No one's faith is 100% strong. Not the Pope, not anyone. Not Bishop Eden, who was just here for the symposium. What a great lady. No one has a 100% faith. But you continue to work, and you challenge it, and you question it, and you do these works. As you're practicing these things with faith, that's you doing the experimenting. That's you as the scientist of your faith. As the Albert Einstein of your own faith. You're doing these experiments, and you're molding it, and you're strengthening your faith. So I think that's a very, very important thing, the practicing faith. See, I expected going into this, we're going to have a big disagreement. Not necessarily. We both think that practicing is very important. We just think for different reasons, right?
And it's how you define practicing. It's how you define faith.
And I think that's it's all about you, how you define that. How you define practicing, how you define faith, is what's important to you. But as long as, and this is my major point, but as long as, however you define anything, as long as you're doing things for the betterment of others and not just yourself, Jesus is just fine with that.
Sure, and I will pretty much, for the most part, agree with that. I think that you need to be pursuing Christ and challenging yourself with that. Mm-hmm. I think you do need to believe in Him or to be pursuing Him in order to truly be able to transform others when you're loving and serving. But I think there's just a love a love so great, and that a love that is found nowhere else other than the gospel, and that we always just have to remember to put that first. Whether we think we have religion or whether we think we're practicing faith, it doesn't really matter. That we every single day we have to strive for love.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as, when we screw up, we don't knock ourselves down, because that's where Christ pops in and says, you are broken, but I'm here. You're forgiven. Keep working in love,
Definitely.
right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's cool, is that we're given the freedom to just continue to practice faith or have religion, but we're able to do that every single day, and we've just got to put love as a forefront for every single thing that we do.
Most definitely. I think I've allotted all my main points. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, Matt?
I don't think so, no. I think I would end with Romans 1:17, which says, "For in the gospel the righteousness of God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith from first to last, just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith." So I think that again, you can take that
as your point,
as its interpretation, but that is my ending point.
Wonderful. No, this has been a very fun topic. I think we could talk for an hour, 2 hours. We will have other podcasts, other episodes stemming from things we've said in this, 100%. But these are the conversations that I love to have.
Absolutely.
That was your closing final thoughts, Matt? You're good?
Definitely. But if you guys have any thoughts on this, any disagreements, any agreements, opinions, whatever it is, we want to hear from you guys. So whether that's commenting on our YouTube page, whether that is commenting on our own personal Facebook pages if you're friends with us, we want to hear from you guys. And so send your questions. You can also send it to questions.thebooth@gmail.com. We also check that for questions and disagreements as well. But thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, we are very happy that you tuned in with us. I just want to say that, to me, my motto is the meaning of life is to love and not to be loved. So regardless, Matthew and I, we have disagreements on why people act, why they should act, the motivations behind it, but we both are in agreement that we should love each other, respect each other. That's what we do here at the booth. We respect each other. Its conversation should be no punishment for honesty. Matthew, thank you so much for having this decent conversation. And you guys continue this conversation, like Matthew said, in the comments. This has been The Booth, Sean and Matthew, and we will be with you next time.